Hello everybody, here we are today talking and recapping week 5 in the CFL. Before we start, I know I probably look a little crummy, been working overtime, I'm a little tired, but in general I'm excited to do this video, so bear with me while I look a little crummy. Anyway, that being said, let's get into it. So to start off, I wanted to say that going into this game, obviously there was a lot of questions about the whole quarterback situation for Edmonton, and things ended up looking pretty good for them to decide to go with Taylor Cornelius. He had probably one of the better games of the year for himself and was able to really move the ball with his legs as well and to be mobile, because for a bigger guy, he is pretty mobile. Ultimately, in this game with Cornelius at the helm, it was 11-3 late. Edmonton was looking like they were going to cruise on to their first win of the season. Not so fast. Saskatchewan ties it up late in this game, and then an interesting decision happens by CJ Sims as it becomes a 12-11 Saskatchewan lead. A little bit later in this one, with not too much time left, Cornelius throws a pick to Nick Marshall, who's got absolute ice in his veins, back-to-back game-clinching interceptions. He, of course, did so against Calgary, now does so here against Edmonton. Ultimately, though, I do look at this game as a game Edmonton should have won, because they had the lead late, and I know no lead is safe in the CFL, but obviously to have a lead like that so late in the game, you're hoping you can cling on to it. But B, they also had a touchdown taken off the board thanks to a holding call, I want to say, and then also their kicker missed 2 field goals on the day, so that's points that they're all not getting there. In general, a very tough loss for them. But of course, a game that they can look back and say, well, we didn't win it, we were in a position to do so, now we have to finish it out. But at the end of the day, it is Edmonton who falls to 0-5 for the first time since 1965 to start a season, as things continue to stay ugly in Alberta. And then for Saskatchewan, I got to be honest, I do think while they did get the win here, they are not a team that is selling me on being a Grey Cup contender. Yes, they are 3-1 to start the season, but at the same time, they beat Edmonton twice, beat Calgary, which I guess that one was not that bad of a win considering that they had a lead late. But in general, if you need to claw your way back into a game against Edmonton with the state that they're at right now, probably not ideal. Anyway, though, you got to win these games. Saskatchewan did so good for them. Then, of course, the second game of the week was Calgary at Winnipeg. This one was a doozy because you get to see two teams that have been towards the top of the West for some time now. Winnipeg, of course, hosting them and hoping to get a win here. Early in the game, though, it was Calgary that really looked like they were the more aggressive team. The team was able to do more. Dedrick Mills, I'm going to stop calling him Cedric Mills. I don't know why I thought his name was Cedric for so long. I figured out it was Dedrick, but then I just kept calling him Cedric on accident. Dedrick Mills had a really good first quarter with 70-plus yards and a major. The Stamps at one point led 10-0 and actually had an 11-4 lead late in the first half, I should say. The second half of the first half, if you want to call it that. But Greg McCrae had a big-time reception that turned into a touchdown off of his legs. With that play, ends up tying the game up at halftime to make it to, 11-all. So it goes from literally in that instant, Calgary's got the lead at the half. What is Winnipeg doing, considering that Brady Oliveira had 0 yards in the first half on 2 carries, to, the game's all tied up. What is going to happen here? And eventually it's also McCrae that ends up having a little bit of another big impact, I should say a pretty big impact off of a return. Turns into a touchdown for them, if I'm not mistaken, as Janarian Grant gets hurt. And McCrae fills in, does a great job, has a really, really big return. But yeah, so there you go there. Winnipeg starts to get a lead. Shout out to Brady Oliveira as well, who had like 73 yards in the second half, again after having 0 yards in the first half. So that's good for them. Eventually, Winnipeg would go on to win this game with 23 unanswered points, as the defense ended up holding Jake Maier to 122 passing yards, and he was something like 14 for 25 with an interception, and Dedrick Nichols ended up having 3 tackles for loss. This is a good win for Winnipeg because obviously the Blue Bombers want to win every game possible, and now Calgary is left wondering what kind of team they are, because of course with the Stamps they are 1-3 to start the year. Jake Maier had 2 really unconvincing games, and we can say, this was a problem, this was a problem. At the end of the day, 14 for 25, 400 and some yards it's pretty relevant, the fact that when he does have a bad game, they are pretty low yard outages, and it's a problem where if he's not going to throw interceptions, that's good, but if he's also just going to throw one interception but not even have 200 yards passing, that could be an issue. But of course, we will see where Calgary's season goes, because they have a very winnable 3-game stretch that they have to take advantage of. So of course, the third game of the week was Ottawa traveling to Hamilton. The Tiger Cats looking for their first win of the season, and this one started off with the big hype about Jeremiah Masoli returning to the CFL exactly a year after he played. Unfortunately, he would get hurt, in the second quarter, and of course is now going to miss the rest of the season thanks to an Achilles tendon tear. I think is what it was. I can't remember what it was yesterday. But yeah, so Dustin Crum came in, and the team actually did hold a lead at halftime. Unfortunately, though, for Ottawa fans, Hamilton ended up scoring 12 points in the second half, including a big play by Tyreek McAllister to win this game. Although Crum did make this game interesting, very interesting. Towards the end of the game, it was like the last play of the game. He ran the ball and got tackled at like the 2-yard line. I want to say it was Jagger Davis or somebody like that. Maybe not Jagger Davis. I don't remember who it was, but somebody got the tackle, and it was a defensive lineman, and they were hustling to get there. But yeah, ultimately, I got to say, Ottawa's defense stood firm when it needed to, but Ottawa's offense averaged just 2.6 yards per play on second down. Obviously not ideal, but that was a talking point there. The Tiger Cats defense recorded 6 sacks, so that's also good, and Hamilton got 12 points off turnovers. So anytime you have, I think Ottawa had like 3 turnovers, that's going to be an issue. And then the Tiger Cats, interestingly, only had 1 touchdown, and it was Mark Liggio that had something like 5 field goals in this one as the Tabbies win their first game of the season. Ottawa's future looks murky while Hamilton gets a much-needed win, and they play Edmonton this week. So, of course, if they can get a win there, they go from being 0-3 to 2-3, which makes their season feel much more alive. And then the final game of the week, you have the Montreal Alouettes traveling to BC Place to play the BC Lions. And this one was interesting because you have the talk of the town as the Lions got their first loss of the season last week against the Argos, and it was pretty bad. Vernon Adams Jr. had 6 interceptions, and he talked about how he wanted to bury that performance, all that stuff, and we were looking to see how he would bounce back. Well, he ended up, of course, having a pretty good game here. Sean Shivers, I want to keep saying Shivers, but it's Shivers, would be the go-to guy in the backfield for BC, as Mizell's still out. But early on, both sides kept it fairly close, and Montreal was actually impressing me with the fact that they were able to keep it close in this game, because again, I've kind of given my doubts about Montreal and how good of a team they actually are. But a big moment there's 2 big moments late in the first half, was Montreal. It was 14-10 BC. They try to go for a field goal, and it gets blocked, is it not? Yes, in return for a touchdown to make it 21-10. And then later on, just before the start of the second half, it's still, in the first half, Chandler Worthy tries to get a punt, and I don't know if he doesn't see the ball or what. It basically hits him in the chest, bounces off. BC gets the ball to make it 24-10. Montreal does respond and get a field goal to make it 24-13 at the half. But you're looking at that, and that is an 11-point gap compared to when they were looking to make it a 1-point gap. So obviously a big talking point there. But yeah, Shivers would have a big play later in this game. Ends up fumbling though. But of course, Montreal looks to make things interesting thanks to that. They are not able to do a whole lot, and then BC wins this game. What is it? It's 35-19. This one was interesting for multiple reasons. The first one being Montreal as a defense, I don't think it allowed more than 17 points all year, and the Lions had 4 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, in this one. But of course, too, I think another thing was for Montreal, the reason that they lost this game, aside from that big 2 missteps, miscues at the end of the first half, was the fact that they kept going for field goals in the second half, which is something you can't do when you're in a deficit like they were in. Of course, they're trying to keep it close, and I know it's situational, but when you're able to move the ball, you got to be able to punch it in. When you're in the red zone, not something they were, able to do very well, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Austin Mack, I am going to clip this and then send this out or just tag him. Austin Mack, Fort Wayne guy, meet me at Coney Island in Fort Wayne. I want to meet you, man. But anyway, for this game, I'm going to say that Montreal impressed me because while they did lose this one, again, I do think a big part of that was the end of that first half. And while I don't exactly say that they're a top-tier team, absolutely not, I do think that their defense and the offense especially are going to be able to get it done against these bad teams, especially out west, with one team in particular probably being a bad team, and then, you know, some teams out east that they could take advantage of. Montreal would not surprise me if they actually did make the playoffs, which I thought that they would be worse, but at the same time, with Mazzoli being out too, that's probably going to help them get a few wins against Ottawa. I don't know how many games they have against them left, but yeah, so for that is all for week 5, right? But anyway, there's my recap. What are your thoughts from this week? I'd love to hear them down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And